Through the barrage, 8,000 Egyptian assault troops cross the Suez Canal in boats. In a set-piece movement, practiced to perfection, they establish a bridgehead. 70,000 troops and 1,700 tanks follow them across the bridges. Against them stand a meager 436 Israeli soldiers in isolated fortifications, 7 artillery batteries, and 3 lone tanks on the canal itself. They are overwhelmed. Soon the Egyptian flag flies proudly over the east bank of the canal. Israel's first line of defense, 170 tanks, moves forward, only to be mauled by thousands of Egyptian infantry firing portable Saga anti-tank missiles. By morning, 140 tanks are just burned out shells. And Egypt holds a line 10 kilometers wide, the length of the canal. The surprise was complete. Israeli intelligence swallowed Arab propaganda that Egyptian and Syrian activity was only in response to fears of impending Israeli attacks. Out of the smoke in the north, the first of 1,500 Syrian tanks bear down on a solitary Israeli tank platoon in a forward position.
Our Air Force failed in the struggle between the planes against the ground-to-air system. We were caught completely by surprise.
And if we have to pay the price for living, we have to pay.
Israel is on the verge of destruction.
That can give in.
According to Time magazine, when all seems lost, Golda orders 13 atomic bombs assembled and loaded onto Israeli Mirage and Phantom jets. Apparently, just before the bombs are activated, the tide of battle begins to turn. A week into the war, 1,000 Egyptian tanks begin an offensive to break out of their stronghold and into the Sinai Peninsula. It was to lead to the biggest tank battle since World War II and the turning point of the war in the south. Dragging portable bridges and under continuous Egyptian fire, the troops worked their way forward. Divisional Commander Major General Arik Sharon arrives first at the canal, but without bridges. Against orders and to the fury of his commanders, Sharon manages to get a force of only 30 tanks across the canal. In rapid movement on the lightly defended desert, they destroy missile bases, opening the skies to Israeli jets. A UN ceasefire stops the Israeli advance, which by then is barely 100 kilometers from Cairo. For 2 days, Israel chases the Syrians off the Golan Heights, across the 1967 border, and into Syria itself. President Anwar Sadat wipes clean the Arab shame of 3 decades. He has removed forever the psychological block of Israeli unbeatability and Arab inferiority. The 1977 elections proved to be a revolution in Israeli politics. Israel goes to the polls and elects longtime opposition leader Menachem Begin, doing away with the Socialist Labour Party. And if that were not change enough, barely 6 months later, President Anwar Sadat of Egypt lands at Tel Aviv airport. On his way to Jerusalem, Israelis respond enthusiastically to his courageous peace initiative. In March 1979, on the White House lawn in Washington, US President Jimmy Carter hosts the signing of the peace treaty between Israel and the largest Arab state. While talks progress towards peace in the south, Israel's northern border is on fire. Katyusha rockets fall on towns and villages every night, fired from PLO strongholds over the border. The PLO attacks seemingly at will. Drawing strength from its leader, Yasser Arafat, it mounts a wave of terror designed to spread fear in Israel and around the world. June 6, 1982, 1100 hours. The first Israeli forces invade the beaches of southern Lebanon as armor and planes roar into action. Defense Minister Arik Sharon assures the Israeli cabinet that the action would be over in 48 hours.
Mr. Begin told us that he wants to move the army 40 kilometers from the border for 3 or 4 days, clean it from Katyushas, and then go back. Instead of 4 days, it began to be a war of years. Instead of 40 kilometers, the army all of a sudden arrived at the entrance of Beirut.
The central and eastern arms engage Syrian troops in fierce fighting. As the central thrust advances, it undermines the Syrian grip on Beirut itself. Israeli troops barrel toward the city. With no break in the fighting, Israel's forward units drive into Christian East Beirut. Begin believes the Christian militiamen will finish off what is left of Arafat's force. Sharon disagrees and orders planes and artillery to open fire on Muslim West Beirut, to pound the Palestine Liberation Army into submission and surrender. Israeli troops capture the airport and the Beirut-Damascus highway, the Syrian escape route from the city. In August, as America and Lebanon seek a country willing to take Arafat's fighters, Arik Sharon orders the heaviest bombings yet, killing some 300 people. In Israel, growing public pressure calls for a stop to the bombardment of Beirut and demands that the boys come home. For the first time in Israel's history, the moral conviction of the Israeli army begins to break. Early September sees over 14,000 PLO and Syrian forces leave Lebanon. Yasser Arafat, having held his position honorably throughout the whole invasion, is forced to move his headquarters from Beirut to Tunis.
This is a part of the long march, yes, to our independent state, to our capital, Palestine, Jerusalem.
In the wake of the withdrawal, to prevent intercommunal violence, the Israeli government orders its soldiers into West Beirut. But Arik Sharon takes the opportunity to surround the refugee camps of Sabra and Shatila, where, he claims, 2,000 armed PLO terrorists are hiding. The camps are then turned over to the Christian militiamen. With not a single armed PLO soldier in the camps, hundreds of unprotected men, women, and children are butchered in a night of senseless slaughter. The moral ground upon which Israel has always stood is rapidly sinking beneath her feet. A climate of shame is in the air. First to take advantage of this are the Palestinians of the occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip. They had watched the misfortunes of their brethren in Lebanon. Now they were quick to act. Brave young men with nothing to lose confront Israeli security forces in a running battle. The teenage stone throwers defy the curfews, tear gas, and rubber bullets. The Intifada, or Palestinian uprising, has begun.
The Intifada differs from other acts of terror because it was maybe the first time that the Palestinian people as such mobilized themselves on the side of the Intifada people. It was really more of a popular movement than ever before.
I came to the conclusion that we cannot solve the relations between the Palestinians in the territories during the period of the Intifada by military means only.
The Palestinians of the territories have been passive and silent for decades. Suddenly, they find they have a voice, and one the outside world wants to listen to. TV crews from every nationality jostle each other whenever the youngsters take to the streets. The younger they are, the more poignant the pictures. They become a generation of media stars, heroes of a television war. Throughout the towns and villages of the West Bank, and in the overcrowded and unhealthy refugee camps of Gaza, a new generation of Palestinians stop waiting for the world or some faraway liberation organization to solve their problems. Then suddenly, media attention shifts when Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait, triggering the Gulf War.
The public is advised to keep gas masks within reach.
Every resident of Israel and the territories is issued with a gas mask. Families at home improvise hermetically sealed rooms against bacterial or chemical warfare. It was with great fear that Israelis watched TV on the first night of the war, waiting to be sent to the shelters and told to put on their gas masks. Teams are sent in to check the air for poisons. No bacteria, no gas. Within a few days, half of Israel's population is arrogantly sitting outside, watching the patriots explode the scuds high above their heads. This was perhaps the first war that the Israelis could sit back and watch, even if they could not really enjoy it. But the world is not the same after the Gulf War. A new friendship, forged in the fire of a war against a common enemy, has brought Arabs and the West closer than ever before.
After the Gulf War, we agreed upon for President Bush initiative to go to Madrid conference and to participate in it. The bilateral talks took place in Washington, but the Israelis were maneuvering till we start this secret negotiation which took place in Oslo.
Then suddenly, the Norwegian government shocks the world. Foreign Minister Holst arrives in Jerusalem carrying a declaration of principles already signed by Yasser Arafat. For months, it seems, Holst has been secretly hosting direct talks between the Israeli government and the PLO. Premier Yitzhak Rabin signs the declaration on behalf of Israel. The opponents of peace become more violent in their resistance. Extremist Palestinians, the Hamas, and the fundamentalist Islamic Jihad group launch daily attacks on Israeli citizens and soldiers, trying to kill the peace initiative even before it is born. Jewish settlers of the occupied territories religiously oppose life under Palestinian sovereignty. They hit out at their neighbors, attacking Arabs in the streets. They too are determined to stop the peace process.
Rabin, Peres are not the Jewish people. We are the Jewish people. We make the rules. Not Rabin, not Peres.
The two sides ratify the agreement. Like its predecessor 14 years before, it is a historic moment, even if Mr. Rabin's handshake is a little hesitant.
Many things happened that I didn't believe that would happen. Many things happened that I believe that they will happen, I came to the conclusion, if there is any chance, is with the PLO of Arafat.
The Israeli army finally pulls out its bases in the Gaza Strip and Jericho, ending 27 years of bitter occupation. Yasser Arafat quits Tunis and arrives to live in Gaza. Making a triumphant entrance, Arafat returns from exile to take up residence as leader of his people.
This is an appeal from me, here from Gaza, for the whole international community to help us to protect the peace process through the real and the honest implementation to what had agreed upon. And especially, we are facing now troubles concerning Jerusalem.
King Hussein of Jordan is next to sign his name on a new page of Middle East history. As King Hussein makes his historic flight over Jerusalem, tensions are running ever higher through the crowded streets of East Jerusalem, where neither Palestinians nor the rest of the Arab world have ever accepted the fact of a united city. And Israelis, who will never give up their hold on the city, say they will fight to prevent it ever being divided again. But as long as the future status of Jerusalem is not yet fully agreed to by all, the city of peace is sitting on a powder keg of sensitivities.
The Palestinian institution, the holy, sacred Christian and Muslim places in the holy city. And Israel hadn't the right to make any demographic change or to discuss with any other body the situation in the holy city, Jerusalem, but only with the Palestinians.
Behind the closed doors of prejudice, where windows of compromise never open, and the banners of extremism wait to be unfurled, where neither Palestinians nor the Israelis, who will never give up their hold on the city, say that Jews and Arabs must be enemies, for they have always been so.
They didn't win a single war, and we, who won all the wars, didn't win a single peace. So each of us has had to draw the conclusions.
After almost 50 years, will Israel at last be recognized by all its neighbors and find a full and equal place among the nations of the region?
Well, it's true. In accordance to the Bible, all the prophets came from this region. I would not advise anyone to become a prophet. What will happen in the coming 50 years? We have to have a policy that gives a peace a chance.
Thus it may come to pass that nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.